Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Newkirk, and I'm the Executive Director of the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, and I want to welcome you to this Year 1, thank you, Highway 17 Wildlife Crossing Year 1 Impact Report. This is a story about connection. It's a story about how roads can connect us as human beings. How many people got here on a road? Yep, I came here on a road. I get my groceries by getting on a road, whether I'm at the farmer's market or at the grocery store. I use a road to connect to my office from my home in Felton. I use roads to connect to my friends and family. Can you imagine what it would be like to not be able to connect? Oh, hold on, you don't have to imagine that, right? We just came through a pandemic during which we really couldn't connect to each other. And the word I most often hear associated with the pandemic is trauma. And so obviously, whatever else you can say about not connecting, it's traumatic experience. Our roads connect us, but they isolate wildlife from each other. And so this is a story about how we can connect wildlife without isolating ourselves from each other. Connecting mountain lions to habitat is critically important because, for all the same reasons that we need to connect, they need food, they need habitat so that they can access a broader gene pool. Young male mountain lions need to establish territories so that they are not competing with each other. And it's other animals too. What you'll see today is a variety of animals need connection and are using the wildlife tunnel in order to connect to each other. And you guys, this is not just a cute wildlife video story, although it is a lot of cute wildlife. This is science, right, Dr. Wilmers? This is science. And this is a story about inspiration, innovation, and amplification. Now, inspiration, that's the science, right? The scientists, some of whom are here today, noticed patterns of wildlife vehicle interactions on Highway 17. And if you don't know what wildlife vehicle interactions are, that's a fancy word for roadkill. And so the scientists were noticing these patterns of wildlife vehicle interactions, and we all got together and made a commitment to solve that problem. And that's where the innovation comes in. The definition of innovation is having no idea what you're doing and figuring it out anyway. And so the Land Trust, together with a lot of the partners that are here in the room, tried to figure it out. And what we realized we needed was control of the site control, and that meant a lot of land acquisition on both sides of Highway 17. But it also meant agency partnerships, and some agencies that didn't naturally work well together at the time. And I want to welcome Morgan and Nancy from Caltrans, who are here today, and some made that partnership happen. It also meant some gentle nudges from some well-positioned public officials, and Senator Laird is here today. And it meant public support. And thank you, Santa Cruz County, for Measure D in 2016. Measure D was part of the public funding piece that came together in order to make the wildlife crossing happen. And a lot of the Land Trust members sponsored this work as well. So there was a tremendous amount of public and private investment in order to make the Highway 17 wildlife crossing happen. But what do I mean by amplification? It turns out that California needs a lot more wildlife crossings. And so one of the first things that happened after this project was complete was a little bill called SB 790, which actually institutionalized the partnerships that made this project possible. This year, we passed Proposition 4 in California, which will provide substantial state funding for more and more of these wildlife crossings. And thanks again, Santa Cruz County, which you just passed Measure Q. And Measure Q will provide the local match so that we can access as much of the money from Proposition 4 as possible. the last piece of the amplification is just simply telling the story, and that's events like this. You know, the front page of the Good Times newspaper, we've had a number of great stories on this wildlife crossing, and so let's keep telling this story. In many ways, it's our connections with each other that made this project possible. And so I want you to sit back and enjoy this good news story. We need some good news. And I hope you'll come away from this event today feeling a greater connection with the nature that's all around us, a greater connection to your friendly neighborhood land trust, and a greater connection to the community of people right here that cares about nature, connections to nature, protecting and conserving nature. And so thank you for being here today. And with that, I'd like to introduce my partner, Chris Wilmers, who is a land trust trustee, but also the director of the Santa Cruz Puma project and a professor at UC Santa Cruz. Chris.
Well, thanks, Sarah, and thank you all so much for coming. I want to set the stage for the main event and give a little bit of background for how we got here. So I'm a professor at UC Santa Cruz in wildlife ecology, and I started working on mountain lions here in the Santa Cruz Mountains about 17 years ago, with the goal of trying to understand how we humans and our development influence everything from their behavior and physiology to their movements and population and ultimately their management and conservation. And when we think about large carnivores, this is how we often imagine them, right? These regal animals living in these pristine environments. But unfortunately, the situation they increasingly face looks more like this, where they're increasingly having to deal with human encroachment, human development, taking over the habitats in which they live. And if we zoom into the Santa Cruz Mountains, you can see that, we've done a great job as a community of preserving big open spaces, right? But you see that the Santa Cruz Mountains is also surrounded by concrete and is bisected by roads, and these create real challenges and obstacles for these animals. Highway 17, for instance, and Highway 101 are these two sort of major problems for mountain lions. Highways create lots of mortality for animals when they try to cross it, and they can also act as just totally hard barriers that animals can't get across. And so when it comes to the Laurel Curve and the story there, it actually really starts with a love story between 16M and 18F. So when we study mountain lions, we catch them briefly and we put a tracking collar on them. And that tracking collar allows us to follow their movements around the Santa Cruz Mountains. These points here, each one of them is a GPS location from the collar of 16M. And we call him 16 because he was the 16th animal we collared, and we give him an M because he was a male. And then 18F was subsequently collared. She got an F because she's a female. And when we watched his movements around the Santa Cruz Mountains, it looked like, pretty typical for a big male. He had this big territory kind of squeezed between 17 and Highway 9. But then something happened, and that is that all of a sudden he starts crossing Highway 17. The question is why? Well, here's a little animation of his data. You can see him sort of doing his thing. And then all of a sudden he crosses, and why does he cross? Well, something's going on this side. This is 18F. And if we zoom in, we can see that, look, he's crossing Highway 17 at the Laurel Curve. He's spending some quality time with 18F. And then things start to go south a little bit when he crosses back across Highway 17. And after he crosses back across Highway 17, he slows way down. It takes him 2 weeks to complete this journey that he could normally do in a single evening. And we could see him just spending days and days at particular locations before just moving a half mile and spending another few days at that place. We didn't really understand what was going on until we caught up with him again on this camera. And you can see a patch of about a square foot of skin removed from the back of his body. And when we caught up with him again, maybe 3 months later, to replace his collar, he still had this open, festering wound. It had healed up quite a bit, but it was still a problem. And so we're almost sure that what happened is he got hit on the 17, probably dragged a bit, miraculously survived, and came back. Unfortunately, 18F was not so fortunate. She died on Highway 17 a few months later, and when we performed a necropsy on her body, she had a fetus, most likely the child of 16M. So this was, a really tragic outcome for this love story, but it sort of seeded what ultimately became, something great for mountain lions. So by that time, we had already collected a lot of data on mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Each one of these colors is a different animal. The squares are females, the circles are males, and we could use this data to build models predicting where mountain lions should cross Highway 17. And they showed two things. One is just north of the spillway, the Lexington Reservoir, on the north side of the mountain range, and the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District is working with Caltrans right now to put a tunnel under the road there. And the other place is around the Laurel Curve. And I have these distinct memories of going into the Land Trust's office around 2012 or something like that, and showing them our data. And all of a sudden, you could see the light bulb starting to go off. Like, oh, we need to do easements. We need to, crossings. We've never done something like that. And, they took it and they ran with it. And it was an incredibly hard thing to do. And it wasn't something that the Land Trust had ever done before, right? But through lots of logistics, lots of politics, lots of easements and engagement with Caltrans and our local political leaders, they saw this through with a nice assist from John Laird, I might add. And we now have this, amazing tunnel at the Laurel Curve facilitating wildlife movement. So we're going to get to the main act in a second here and learn a whole lot more about the Laurel Curve. But before we do, I just want to show you where we're going next. And a few years ago, along with colleagues across the state, we published a paper on the genetics of mountain lions throughout California and Nevada. And what we found is that mountain lions, particularly in these coastal mountain ranges along the coast of California south from here, are pretty much only breeding with each other anymore. They've become disconnected from these other mountain ranges. And that's what these colors are showing. They're showing you that process where they're no longer breeding with each other. California should just be one color. There's no reason that mountain lions should be separated from each other. Mountain lions can travel hundreds of miles to find a new mate. The colors are happening because of the roads and the development that are bifurcating these mountain ranges. And along with this separation, we're finding that the genetic health of these populations is really deteriorated. So much so that in some places along the California coast, we're finding rates of malformed sperm in males way above 90%, testicles that fail to descend. We're starting to see kinked tails, which have been this sort of weirdly diagnostic feature of animals who are inbred in mountain lion populations. And as a result, mountain lions have become provisionally listed as a state-threatened species in this sort of outlined area here. So what can we do? Well, we've got to reconnect these mountain ranges, right? And this is where the 101 comes in. And the 101 is this really important barrier now between the Santa Cruz Mountains and neighboring ranges, Diablo Range to the east and the Gavilan Range to the south. And we know this from the genetic data, and we also know where the important connections are from our mountain lions and other wildlife. And so here's this story of 54M, who sort of led us to where this future work is. And we collared him right near the Laurel Curve, kind of coincidentally. And right after we collared him, he took this massive journey across the Santa Cruz Mountains. He crossed Nicene Marks, over Mount Madonna, and all the way to this outlined purple area, which, as you might have it, is this land trust property, Star Creek. From Star Creek, he sort of hung out in that geography for a while. And then he came all the way to the 101 and tried to cross there right into another land trust property, Rocks Ranch. And this is where I give the land trust amazing credit as well, and that is that they've gone outside of their county to help preserve land because they realize that if we don't protect this northern Gavilan, we're going to lose our connectivity for wildlife that would bring us new individuals into the Santa Cruz Mountains. Unfortunately for 54M, his story ends right at the 101. That's the last position we got data from him. And we're almost sure that's because he got hit on the 101 and his collar broke as a result. More recently, another mountain lion, 158M, who was collared by our colleagues at CDFW and UC Davis, he approached 101 from the south and wanders along the 101 looking for somewhere to possibly cross. And as you could see, he would have loved to cross right here and go up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, but he just couldn't because 101 is this hard barrier. And to really prove that to ourselves, we collared a whole bunch of bobcats and a single fox, actually, in this geography as well. And you can see the 101 is just hemming them in. And so the solution here, which the Land Trust is very much leading, is to put a tunnel or a bridge across the Highway 101. And they recently got somewhere around a $5 million grant from the state to work with Caltrans and explore this possibility. So that's where they're headed. So turning our attention back to the Laurel Curve, I want to introduce our next speakers, Tanya and Ahíga Snyder, who are really important to connectivity projects, not just in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but throughout the state. One day they'll be in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the next day they'll be up at Highway 395 on the east side of the Sierras, north of Reno. They're all over the place, and they're super important to each one of these connectivity projects you've heard about. So I'll let them take it over.
Rio, are you ready to have some fun? Let's do it. So can you help us settle the debate? We're trying to figure out which animal of the two is more elusive, Team Mountain Lion or Team Badger. Please raise your hand if you've ever seen a mountain lion in person in the wild. Oh, that's good. Wow, you are experienced.
How about an American badger in the wild? All right.
Oh, that's good. But she always wins, so it's settled. The badger is more elusive. Okay, I always lose. I always lose that one. All right, everybody, the art of tracking. To become a successful wildlife tracker, it's all in the eye. You need to detect tiny details in the environment. So we're gonna start off with a little game. I want you to try your hardest to find the animal in the image. I call this game, What is the Animal and Where is it? I take credit for naming that. All right, everybody. You're good. You've seen badgers, you've seen mountain lions. You have 4 seconds. Go. 3, 4. There we go. All right, everybody. Brave soul, name it. What was the animal? Bobcat, there we go. Yeah, right behind the fence line, climbing down the concrete section of a culvert, ready to start his day. We're not done, I got one more, okay? I'm gonna show you a series of images. We're gonna do this in like 12 seconds. I'm gonna show you a series of images, and I want you to name the correct animal. If you do not name the correct name, we don't advance. If you name it correctly, we advance. And this game, I named this one too. It's called Name the Animal. So, Rio, here we go. Oh, okay. Let's do the first one together. Okay, all right, so here we go. Redwoods. Easy. You got it. All right, Rio, go. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Ooh, it got real quiet. Pronghorn, yep. Last one. Ooh. Oh, that was mixed. That was mixed. Okay, I found this one with my friend Neil Sharma, who's in the audience, and I learned it. This is an Incentina, right? Yeah, really good. All right, everybody, here we go. All of these animals have one very special thing in common, and that is they all need to move in order to survive. But what happens when they move across our highways and roads? The result can be extremely dangerous. You can hear the car. That was close, but everyone, with your help, we have a solution to protect and connect one of our most fascinating, one of our most iconic, and one of our most sacred natural resources, wildlife. Everybody, my name is Ahíga Snyder. I'm a wildlife researcher, certified wildlife tracker, and co-owner of Pathways for Wildlife.
I'm Tanya Diamond, co-owner of Pathways for Wildlife, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Okay, if we had to sum up our career into one 12-second video, then this must be it. The most positive, the most popular, and the most viral road ecology video of all time, our video of a coyote and badger successfully traveling through a culvert together. But what we really do is we specialize in conducting wildlife connectivity studies with an emphasis on animal behavior and road ecology. So in short, we take situations like this and we turn them into situations like this. Count the deer. But for Highway 17, Tanya, take them to the beginning.
So it truly takes a group of wonderful partners to do a project of this magnitude. And as Dr. Chris Wilmers had mentioned, in 2014, we got together with the Land Trust of Santa Cruz, Caltrans, and Dr. Chris Wilmers at UC Santa Cruz Project. And we started looking at Highway 17 and how it was bisecting the Santa Cruz Mountains and cutting through critical habitat for wildlife movement. And our study area connects from Scotts Valley up to the summit in Santa Cruz County. Our first job was to begin scouting the whole landscape. Were there any bridges or culverts that were available for wildlife to safely travel underneath the highway? What we found is that there was no bridges and culverts that animals could use. There was large viaducts or small culverts topped with grates. And the culverts that were larger, this is a culvert out by Trout Creek by Lexington, they don't have visibility, and animals tend to need to have visibility to be able to see, to travel through a culvert. So this culvert turns midway, not really a viable culvert to facilitate mammal passage. Our next step then was to start collecting roadkill data, and we would do routine roadkill surveys. And as we all know, we found a very high rate of wildlife vehicle collisions. The yellow dots are, to orientate you to the map, are deer that have been hit. The red stars are mountain lions. The blue is coyote, while the orange is bobcat. And what we found from our 2013 to 2016 study was 77 animals were hit in Santa Cruz County. And what astonished us is 34 of these 77 animals were hit at Laurel Curve. Laurel Curve is a roadkill hotspot. So then we were very fortunate to have contributed data from Dr. Chris Wilmers, and as he was showing, his radio collar study shows that mountain lions were also successfully crossing. They were being hit at Laurel Curve, but they were also successfully crossing. So then we rolled up our sleeves and we overlaid the different data. So we overlaid the radio collar data with the roadkill data, and we found that where mountain lions were being hit, they were also successfully crossing. So when we talked to Dr. Chris Wilmers, he said this is where a wildlife crossing should go. But our problem was the land was not protected on either side. The pink property and the blue property you see, that wasn't protected, and that's where the Land Trust of Santa Cruz stepped in and moved mountains literally and protected either side. Because we couldn't install a wildlife crossing if the land wasn't protected on either side. We didn't want to funnel mountain lions into someone's backyard. So then the next step, things got really fun. We set up a huge camera array to understand how animals were traversing the properties and how they were moving up to the highway. And again, this property, we couldn't have built this crossing without the support of you all, because I know there's a lot of folks in this audience from 2014 who were helping support these efforts. So I want to show you some of that footage that we collected. Does anyone know what this mountain lion is doing? She's caterwauling. She's calling for a mate. And it was successful. So a year later, she showed up and she had 2 kittens. It was so exciting. This was on the Lionsgate side. Then we were thrilled. On the other side was a whole different female, and she had 3 kittens. But we realized these kittens are going to mature. In 2 years, they're going to need to be able to disperse out of their parental home range. We didn't have a safe passage yet for them to cross 17, so we knew we needed to build something. Then furthermore, we were recording a male, and he was making routines, like he was circling up to the property and making these pathways, but he was hitting up against 17. And unfortunately, this is the last video we recorded of him, and then he was hit and killed on 17. So we knew we had enough data. It was time to start putting together a wildlife crossing plan. So all the partners got together, started putting together a plan, and I'd like to call out some wildlife heroes that are here with us today, Morgan Robinson and Nancy Seipel from Caltrans. This project would never have happened without them. They are very much our mentors, and with them we were able to figure out where should the actual crossing go. We figured out Laurel Curve, but it was a very large viaduct. So we set up more cameras to understand exactly where should a crossing be installed. And we used this type of data to figure that out. So you can hear the cars on top of the highway. This family deer approached the highway. Didn't have an area where they could cross. But this helped us understand, okay, this is where the crossing should go.
One of the coolest things about this structure, they did not need to stop traffic. Isn't that a miracle? Yeah. So thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Morgan. They didn't go out there with shovels themselves, but they like oversaw it. So check this out. You see the tire tread? Already at the beginning of construction, they had the vision of making it a clear, open pathway. So one of the coolest things is, it kept its structural integrity while also making it perfect for wildlife. So wildlife require openness, so it needs to be wide, long, like short, like not too long, and it has to be well lit enough that it's inviting for wildlife. One of my favorite pictures of a before and after, look what it looked like before. Imagine that. When I saw this area, I was like, how are they going to do that? And not only did they do it, but they turned a vision, they turned a dream into reality
And so we were like, well, we need to put together a study. Are animals using the crossing? Are they using it specifically different species? And out of those different species, how many different individuals were using it? For example, deer, how many male versus female deer were using it? And then very importantly, we wanted to understand if there was a decline in roadkill. Comparing our data from 2013 to 2016, did we see a decrease in mortality of animals being hit because they were using the crossing instead? One of my favorite studies by far. And then we have directional fencing. So we have the crossing, but we also have directional fencing. So this is important in case animals actually accidentally get on the highway, that they can come through and jump back into the protected property and get to the wildlife crossing. And we had very few animals actually on the highway. This is one of the few photos of gray fox that was on the highway but jumped back in. And the directional fencing has been working fantastic in terms of deer. They are actually walking along the fencing, using it to guide themselves to the structure. And then you might ask, well, what about the road where cars need to leave the highway and get to Laurel Drive? There's an electrified mat, which just gives a gentle shock to persuade animals not to get onto the highway, and that's been working terrific.
All right, everybody, let's zoom out and look at all of these components from above. I take pride in this graphic here. This is just so fun. So we have Highway 17. We have our crossing structure. Then, to accompany the crossing structure, we have that fencing, keeping wildlife off the highway, but also guiding them to the structure. And then, Laurel Road, the only area that they can access the highway. Well, we got that covered with the electromat. Gentle shock, just a gentle shock. And then carefully placed jump outs where if an animal does happen to get on Highway 17, they could jump back onto the safe side like that gray fox. And then, this is what I thought was amazing. From this map, you can see that the western side is a lot more forested than the eastern side. The Land Trust of Santa Cruz team, their stewardship team with volunteers and members like all of you, they went out with tools and they built what we call a suggestive route to guide wildlife to that western opening. It is right here. Look at that. And you have a complete structure. Why don't we jump into the data? This is the moment we've been waiting for. So before we begin, let's go over some quick deer facts. So deer are the most captured animals on all of our cameras. They're pretty abundant. Every year, deer held and continue to hold the highest number of roadkill. However, since the structure was installed, 0 roadkill in the study area. And if you stopped by our table today and you played our little game, the question was, how many deer successfully crossed through? They hold the record. I'm gonna let you think about your guess of how many there are. We'll get to that, but first let's jump into how they actually use the structure. History, first deer using the structure. Here we go. This is just a warm-up video because after you see deer using it, the next question is, are they traveling with young? So we have a doe with 2 fawn. You can tell that one of them is a little skittish. Now, as we go through these videos, pay attention to the cars overhead. Next, okay, this is so cool. As animals use structures, they start to get comfortable, so they adopt it as part of their environment. So clearly, they're pretty comfortable. It's like they're just bedded down under a tree. But here's a cool tracking thing. I actually failed this question on a tracking evaluation. So look at this fawn here. It's gonna lay down. If you ever see a deer lay down, it's pretty cool. They're pretty flexible with their elbows. They actually let the elbows hit first. Let's see what that looks like. Right there. Not the most gentle, but they like it. And then things ramp up. So this is that suggestive route that I was telling you about that the Land Trust built. So it looks just like a trail you would hike. This is a deer herd. So we're gonna track these deer as they go back and forth through the structure. Let's go. So count how many individuals and notice that there's females, there's bucks, and there's fawn. This is what you want to see. Now let's have a look within the structure. Same herd. And we have successful crossings. And then, as Tanya mentioned, one of the coolest things is when you track bucks, you can get an idea of how many are in the area, their abundance, through the number of tines that they hold. So here's a male. He has 2 tines. They're beginning to split, so it's going to turn into 4. Still has velvet. It only takes him 1 minute to cross through this structure. So let's track him. So here we go. There's a time, 10:05. Using the suggestive route, entering the undercrossing. Next. And there you go. How many millions did that take for that 1 minute? That was pretty cool. Okay, all right, this is the fun part. So I hope you've been thinking about how many deer crossings. How many deer crossings do you think we've recorded in the first year? Any brave soul out there just want to throw out a number? Here's a hint, it is a lot. Someone said 900. 864 successful crossings. That is unbelievable. Thank you, Lantra Santa Cruz and Caltrans. Now let's move to one of my favorite species. Again, if you visited our table, one of the quiz questions was, how many teeth does a gray fox have? And the answer is, they have 42 teeth. So, if you were a gray fox and you approached this magnificent, beautiful structure, would you, A, use this center section, which is well lit, open, very large and inviting, or would you use these 2 outer sections, which provide cover, a higher vantage point, and are a little bit more hidden? Well, if you said the outer sections, you are correct. Let's have a look. So we have a family of gray fox. The pup is in the back. Now here's a cool thing. Gray fox, they're not the biggest of animals. They get predated upon by coyotes, so they're constantly looking, they're constantly being aware. As they travel through, have a look as they keep looking down to the center section. That's the pup. Okay, now on the way back. So when we set up our cameras, we noticed on this opposite edge over here that it was really like put down, like it was like beaten down, like a beaten down path. That's because when gray fox, when they get to the end, they would whip around there and they created like this really hard packed trail. We're gonna see that. So here they are on their way back. Back and forth movement. And the dad, the male's up front, right here. Okay, look at him whip around. Here is one at a jump out, just great gray fox behavior. They're very into scents, so they'll sniff around for scents and then they'll leave their scent. It's headed toward the structure. You can see the vehicles in the back. Little jump. All right, everyone, there's quite a few crossings out there now. Have you seen a lot of their data? Because one thing I haven't seen is a family of gray fox playing in the structure. Let's have a look. We got it. One of my favorite videos. They're so playful. All right, we were fortunate enough to conduct a bobcat collaring study with Dr. Chris Wilmers. My job, I know it's a horrible job, my job was to pick them up and weigh them. And I asked at the table, what was the heaviest bobcat that I picked up? And I heard 70 pounds, I heard 65 pounds. The heaviest male bobcat that I picked up was 21 pounds. Yeah, they look a lot bigger. Let's see our bobcats. We love tracking bobcats because they leave a multitude of track and sign. One of my favorite things to find is their scratching posts. Here's a beautiful female, and she's gonna show us her amazing retractable claws on this fallen log. Here we go. She's a beauty. They're just so cute. Okay, this is not a bobcat, this is me. Okay, but bear with me here. So I added this video in, and I'm surprised the land trust was like, what's this video doing here? This is us at the structure, setting up the camera station. We leave here, and we go to investigate the electromat. We're together as a group. While we're gone, we get the first animal, the first documented animal, which is a bobcat, crossing through the center section. And I have the camera up, and it fogs my camera, which is why it's not the best video. But I'm still proud of it. Here's the team. Say hi. 12:36. Bobcat time. 13:21. So within the hour. And keep in mind, we're just down the way. That's history. That's history. Now, bobcats are very opportunistic, so they use all the sections. That was right where the gray fox were. And then we have a juvenile. A juvenile showed up, and they're so playful. Now, I did say there was 2 of those tapered sections, so let's go to the opposite side, and let's see the bobcat there. They're using this structure everywhere. Okay, everyone. Recently, I flew to West Virginia to give a tracking workshop to the National Park Service. And one of the things that struck me was there are no mountain lions in West Virginia, which is so weird. I asked the audience, I said, how do you grow up without tracking mountain lions? Like, everywhere I go here, I'm like, oh, I could see a mountain lion track. That's why we're lucky. So here we go. Quick quiz. Another question. I just love torturing you. I like seeing 500 people try to guess these answers. Okay, so I'm 185 pounds. This is an adult male mountain lion. How much does that male mountain lion weigh? To give you an idea. 90. Okay, good guess, good guess. This mountain lion was 141 pounds. Monster. Okay, one more. This is just for me. This is for me. So how many toes do mountain lions have on their front paw? Okay, I heard 5 and 4. The answer is 5. They have 5 toes. Let's go through it. So we have toe 1, toe 2, toe 3, toe 4, and toe 5. Let's see how that looks on the ground. Right there. Remember, that toe 1 is like our thumb. It's up, and it does not show on the ground. This is one of my favorite videos. This is on the western side of the structure, on the land trust property. This is a female mountain lion, and she's met Chris before, okay? You can tell. But listen to the vocalization of the cub. Oh. That little paw swipe. Isn't that the cutest? You know, this video would actually be cuter if she had like 3 cubs. Look at this one. Okay, there's a little bit of a size difference between females and males. Actually, there's a big size difference. We were thrilled when we saw this male show up. One of the questions that we all discussed was, what would be the first mountain lion to use a structure? Would it be a juvenile? Would it be a male, a female? This is an adult male. It's on the rancher's property, on a fire road. It's heading toward the structure. Take note of the time. It is 11:16 p.m. It's a monster. Okay, Rio, get ready for history. The first Puma crossing. Look how calm, just that predator walk. This is new to the environment. And we have our cross. It doesn't stop there. It ramps up. Next, this is on the eastern side. So from the east, heading west, another crossing. A little bit more haste to the movement. And now we're happy. We're sharing this with the Land Trust team. Again, same direction, east to west. So we like history, but we like having a four-peat of history. Again, here we go. So do you think this is the same male? Because they're all male. Look at this. And we're going to get a really good look at this individual. It's raining. Right here. That's a big cat. And he's off. Now let's take a look at the camera data results.
So super, super exciting. And out of the 1,013 animal detections that we recorded, 934 were actual animals using the wildlife crossing, a huge success. And as Ahíga mentioned, we were recording mountain lions, bobcats, deer, but also skunk, which was really excited, and raccoons, the little guys. And as we went over, 164 crossings by deer, huge success. And what was really interesting is as the months progressed, we noticed that we were getting a higher biodiversity of species use. So for example, in June, we were just recording deer, but then in November, we recorded 5 different species, so it was working. That roadkill data that we were talking about, we compared our roadkill from 2013 to 2016. There was 26 deer hit at Laurel Curve. This past year, no deer have been hit. We fixed it. And I want to thank all of you in the audience. I know there's so many folks who've been supporting this project for years, and you have been helping save these animals' lives. And it's been a wild success. So thank you.
All right, so now that the Land Trust tackled Highway 17, what's next? So here we go. We have our Highway 17 corridor linkage. The next step is Highway 101.
And so the work that we did together, along with Post, who's also here in the audience today, we created a regional wildlife connectivity map. And this is a map for deer. So to orientate you to the map, it's a cost surface map. And so green is suitable habitat, really good habitat for deer to move through, while yellow is poor habitat. Yellow is fairly habitat. Not as good as the green, but they'll move through it, versus blue and red is poor habitat. And what you can see is the landscape is highly fragmented for animals like deer to travel through the landscape. So then we put together a study, and we studied all the different bridges and culverts. And we found that out of all these bridges and culverts, there was only 12 locations that deer could safely cross under the different highways. And we were looking at many different highways, 129, 101, 156. But what we found is down at 101, between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Gavilan Range, we had very few passages, almost no passages. But what we did find is deer were being hit. They were being hit on 101. So I'm very excited to say that now the Land Trust and Caltrans and the partners are working on a wildlife overpass at this location. And we're going to hear more about that today from Bryan Largay. And this is critical for animals to be able to travel between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Gavilan Range. As Dr. Chris Wilmers was talking about, animals need to find things like food and water. Juveniles need to disperse out of their parental home range. Males need to be able to find mates. And we know that's critical now because we need genetic flow to happen.
So that takes us to an amazing, one of my favorite properties, Rocks Ranch. You've heard Land Trust talk about it. Why is this place so important? Well, quickly, we're going to show you some camera footage from just a handful of stations. So this area is actually kind of hard to get to, as you'll see. This is a beautiful striped skunk. It's one of my favorite animals. I like their tracks. It's one of the first tracks I've learned, and their tracks are so, they look kind of vicious. They're all about scent. I just love ethology, animal behavior. So this is it's on a wildlife trail, but the reason I picked this is because there was a huge Puma scrape right in front of the camera station. I said, oh, I should put the camera here. So let's have a look at how many species use this area. Beautiful skunk first. If you're not a fan of skunks, sorry. You know, typically animals just do it once and then they're gone, but look at the skunk. Yeah. Show everyone else. Okay, so we have our skunk. Next, beautiful, picturesque fawn. Now here you can see the slope. So you can tell it goes up. Now, everything about that video is just so picturesque and beautiful and majestic, except for the cars that you can hear. Remember, road ecology is always on our mind, so when we put up our cameras, we want to make sure that in the backdrop, you can hear those vehicles, because you eventually want to address that issue. Now, we have, on a foggy morning, this beautiful bobcat. So stealthy. And then our gray fox are back. Beautiful gray fox family. And then this gray fox is leaving his mark. The pups are so cute. So just on one trail we have this, right next to the highway. And then we have the star of the Santa Cruz Mountains here. This animal is not the star of Rocks Ranch, though. We'll get to that. But what I want to point out is when you're analyzing data and you see this camera footage, notice on the left ear, that's a tick. There's a tick on this Puma's left ear, so we can track it. But what I really want to point out is look how this mountain lion is out of breath because the slope is so it's so steep, it even kind of stumbles. So watch everything about this puma. So you could see the heavy breathing. A little stumble right here. Beautiful animal. Makes me feel good because I was tired when I got up there and I'm like, oh, am I losing it? Okay, so next, you could actually see Highway 101 from this camera station beyond the trees. Again, same individual, this is the next day. Look at the tick on the left ear. That's how I color animals, I just put a tick on them. Oh, and the cars are right there. That's 101. That's how close these animals are living near the road. Okay, But that's not the real star of Rock's Ranch. The real star is the animal that she did her thesis on, and that is the American badger, one of my favorite animals. And why are they a very important species, and why are they my favorite? Because they leave behind homes for other animals, such as newts, snakes, salamanders, frogs, all of it, and even other mammals like rabbits, skunks, and this beautiful long-tailed weasel. It's like they drink like 24 ounces of coffee like every minute. Like they don't have a slow mode. Okay, and then you might have heard another very special animal, a burrowing owl. Every time I've seen a burrowing owl, it's been in a badger burrow. Okay, so for this one, I was excited to share this with the Lantras team. I said, hey, we're gonna get a burrowing owl here, I can feel it. So one thing, they always stand on one leg, as you can see. And then they get predated upon by raptors, so they're always paying attention. This is why badger burrows are so important, because if anything flies over to get them, they retreat back in the burrow. We're gonna see all of that in this clip. Here we go. So watch as it hunches down as a bird flies over. Right here. Coast is clear. And then, why don't we have a look at the beautiful female badger that actually dug that burrow? Oh, she's a beauty. So it's morning time for her, it's evening for us, and this is just one of the most beautiful videos. And everyone, that's why wildlife need room to roam. Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
So I have the honor of introducing Bryan Largay from the Lanchester Santa Cruz County, Conservation Director, and I know him as making the impossible happen.
Thank you, Tanya, Ahíga. What a remarkable team. We're so fortunate to collaborate with them and so many others. Let's just do that again. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for having me. Bryan Largay, Conservation Director, Land Trust of Santa Cruz County. And as you can see, our forests and grasslands are full of spectacular creatures, and there's so much we can do together to help them. The Land Trust is all about doing. So what is it that the Land Trust does exactly? Well, our mission is to protect and care for nature. But what do we mean by that? We often think in terms of values. We value life in all its forms, from sandhills to redwoods to coastal wetlands. We value the gifts of nature, healthy food, useful wood, natural flood control, carbon cycling and storage. We value access to nature for all as a foundation for health, connection, and inspiration. So that's a lot for a nonprofit organization. We try to contain ourselves by focusing on the amazing nature of Santa Cruz County. And we also are focused by our toolkit, 5 things that we do well. We protect land using legal and real estate tools. We buy land or specific rights to land. We care for the lands that we've protected day in and day out in perpetuity. That's another word for forever. We build partnerships and collaborate to build projects. And Then we build those projects and help our partners build them. And we raise the funds to make all of this happen. And we've been pretty successful at that recently. We leveraged $4.5 million in donations to secure $45 million for our community in conservation. And thank you for making that happen. So in summary, guided by our values, biodiversity, working lands, and access to nature for all, we apply our toolkit to protect and care for the nature of Santa Cruz County. Now, one major challenge we've identified, as you have heard about, is the need to restore landscapes by rebuilding connectivity to help nature be more resilient, especially in the face of a changing climate. And in the next few minutes, I hope to show you how we're doing that, covering some of the ground you've heard already, but with an additional emphasis on some key points. And Rocks Ranch is the cornerstone to that effort. It's located about 20 miles south of here, just past the southern tip of Santa Cruz County, and includes 2,700 acres of rolling hills, oak woodlands, and wetlands. And while it's outside the Santa Cruz County line, it has great strategic importance to us, which is why we've protected it, and now own the property. But to understand Rocks Ranch better, let's take another look back at the Highway 17 crossing and talk a little bit about that work just one more time. And first off, that project was possible because of intensive collaboration among a variety of partners. And we continue to work with all of them today. Many others have joined this effort. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the pioneering work of one individual, Dan Medeiros, who worked at the Land Trust starting about 15 years ago. He's moved on since, but he spearheaded this work for us and got the ball rolling, and it's incredible what's happened as a result. As the first purpose-built wildlife crossing in the Bay Area, this project is a proof of concept showing what's possible. It's won multiple awards from the transportation sector. Caltrans engineers have requested to transfer into the local district because of their leadership on these kinds of projects. A movement has begun. So zooming in on Highway 17 again, you can see this Google Earth image of Highway 17 meandering across the Santa Cruz Mountains. It actually looks kind of nice and peaceful in this vantage point. On its way over to the Bay Area. So as you've seen, Highway 17 has created this barrier to movement across otherwise large expanses of quality habitat. And that's Lexington Reservoir in the distance near the center of the image, where now Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District is planning another wildlife crossing to be built in 2028. Very exciting. Our Highway 17 crossing at Laurel Curve is located at the Star. And as a thought experience, imagine what would have happened if a subdivision or other intensive development was built right next to the wildlife crossing. It would become a bridge to nowhere. And so the crossing project alone, the infrastructure project alone, is not enough. An essential part of the project is the protected lands on either side. And that's where the Land Trust stepped in. Well, these properties are all privately owned. The Land Trust holds conservation easements over them, which we purchased, so that only 2% of the land can be used for home sites, leaving the rest perfectly suited for wildlife movement to and from the crossing. We now visit these lands regularly, monitoring their condition, ensuring that no structures have been built out of bounds, and implementing restoration projects. Now we are scaling up, applying our toolkit and our partnerships to an even bigger challenge. And that challenge is that we live on an island, an ecological island. This aerial image shows the natural lands of the Santa Cruz Mountains surrounded by developed lands on one side and the ocean on the other. The Santa Cruz Mountains are bounded on the west by Monterey Bay, north by San Francisco Bay, east by the Bay Area cities, and on the south by the fertile farmland of the Pajaro Valley and the Santa Clara and San Juan valleys, which grows great food, but is a hard place to get across if you're a wild animal. And this is a problem. One of the core findings of ecology and evolutionary biology is that islands are where species go extinct. The small land area means smaller populations for any given species, and one disaster can wipe out the entire population. Where does the next generation come from? Climate change makes those disasters far more likely, and the need for resilience all the more important. And as Professor Wilmers shared, this trend is evident in this mountain lion genetics study, each dot representing a sample of DNA, and our Santa Cruz Mountains population, shown in black, isolated from the populations around it. We only have 50 or 60 breeding adults here. And the key that we face is to move forward and reconnect these landscapes together. It's entirely likely that mountain lions are the canary in the coal mine. They're well studied, but many of the other species that could also suffer from genetic inbreeding and depression are likely to face that threat as well, unless we do something about it. Not too far away are these neighboring mountain ranges that are much larger, with big intact areas of habitat. The Diablos, where Henrico State Park is located, 100,000 acres of protected lands. The Gabilan Range, home to Pinnacles National Park. And these mountain ranges in turn connect to vast areas of wild California. We're working with partners to establish what we call a landscape linkage between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Gabilans. The landscape linkage is envisioned as a broad swath of land that's permeable to nature, allowing movement over days or decades for a wide variety of wildlife and even plant communities to move over time. This is a big challenge, and our partners are working on it too. Peninsula Open Space Trust, Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority, and other partners are working on landscape linkages at Coyote Valley and the Upper Pajaro River, and we're collaborating with the Elkhorn Slough Foundation and Research Reserve to establish a linkage to the protected lands around Elkhorn Slough. The idea here is to restore connectivity to support all forms of life, building resilience to face the challenges of the next 100 years, to enable migration for individual animals over the course of their life cycle, to enable migration of whole species in response to climate change, and to promote gene flow, new individuals arriving, bringing their fresh genes with them to keep local populations intact. For example, experts think we need the immigration of 1 or 2 mountain lion a year to sustain our local population's genetics. Now that you know that what we're trying to accomplish, let me take you on a tour of the landscape linkage from the Santa Cruz Mountains to the Gabilan Range. And along the way, we'll visit several properties that the Land Trust has protected. In the north, the Burn Mill Iron and Estrada Ranch. In the middle, Star Creek Ranch, and Rocks Ranch and Island Ranch in the south. In the hills above Corralitos are the redwood forests and manzanita of the Burn Mill Iron and the Estrada Ranch Conservation Easement. This picture is from the top of our hiking trail at Burn Mill Iron. You should come have a walk there sometime. We've got 10 miles of trails. Bring your dog. It's a lovely space. At the southern end of Santa Cruz County is Star Creek Ranch. On this 1,200-acre property, redwood forests give way to grasslands and oak savanna. And then to the south is Rocks Ranch and the Nyland Conservation Easement, which together make a block of almost 3,500 acres of protected lands. This is the same landscape experienced by Puma 54M, as Professor Wilmers described, who was collared up near Highway 17 and made his way south through the Santa Cruz Mountains, across the Estrada Ranch, had a good while around Star Creek Ranch before heading south. And along the way, you can see how the Puma ventured east and west, bouncing off of lower quality habitat and more parcelized landscapes on either side of the linkage. Unfortunately, as we heard, he was struck and killed on Highway 101 just a few hundred feet from Rock's Ranch. Now, this aerial image shows the linkage choke point, as we call it, an area of concentrated effort. A good portion of the land in between Star Creek Ranch and Rock's Ranch is owned by Granite Rock, the company that owns a quarry and an extensive array of buffer lands around it. And we're so grateful for the collaboration with Granite Rock in advancing our work here. We and UC Santa Cruz and Granite Rock partnered on the bobcat collaring study that Professor Wilmers described. Well, and one gray fox. The movement shown here, each color representing a different animal, shows the hard boundary created by Highway 101. It also shows just how permeable those lands are that Granite Rock manages, and the potential for extensive permeability for wildlife movement if we can get them across the road safely. That hard barrier of Highway 101 is an ugly one. The yellow dots that we've seen Tanya and Ahíga present are roadkill records collected by them in this landscape. Substantial roadkill hotspot occurs on the northern end of Highway 101, right at Rock's Ranch, the whole frontage there. I just want to pause for a moment and acknowledge the amazing science done by Pathways for Wildlife, and just recognize that as two people who are passionate animal lovers, to record and bear witness to some pretty sad stories and collect that in a robust scientific way and share it with us, but also with decision makers throughout California and across the country to influence policy. And that's amazing courage. Here's what they see a lot of. Highway 101 on the ground in front of Rock's Ranch. 4 lanes of heavy traffic, 70,000 vehicles a day. And eucalyptus forest, which isn't the best. The culverts in this area are small and often obstructed, so that's the challenge we face. What are we going to do about it? We're taking it step by step. We're starting at the highway and working our way out. Our initiative to build this landscape linkage has 4 major sets of action. First, habitat protection. Rock's Ranch, Nyland Conservation Easement, Star Creek Ranch, these are all building blocks. We've committed to protecting, in our current strategic plan, another 3,000 acres in this geography, and supporting our partners to protect 3,000 more. In collaboration with our partners, we're identifying and advancing numerous opportunities for habitat restoration to restore landscape connectivity. And again, collaborating, we're working to advance wildlife-compatible land management, supporting working lands operators and rural landowners to find good ways to coexist with wildlife while keeping their livestock safe and their pets and their family members. We need to find comprehensive solutions to these problems to truly restore the landscape. And as highways are often the biggest barriers, we're working closely with Caltrans to deliver on multiple projects to support wildlife passage. They're the leaders on this, and the expertise they bring in our region is incredible. The biggest of these is a proposed overpass that would be 150 feet wide and span 250 feet across the highway. Design is underway, including all the fencing needed to get the animals to the crossing. Again, this slide shows the full breadth of the planning area, which is 40 miles from north to south. And zooming in on the choke point, here's where the land trust property, the Caltrans right-of-way, and Granite Rock lands all come together, and the proposed location for the wildlife crossing. Now, I've said the word partners a lot, and that's because we've been working with dozens of partners to make sure we're doing the right work. We each have a unique toolkit. We each have a focal geography, and we're working together, supported by robust science, to advance actions that will make a concrete difference and a permanent impact on this landscape. It's a big team effort, and we're so grateful for the enthusiastic participation by so many. I was Nancy reminded me of Nancy Seipel with Caltrans, of the Caltrans public meeting held for the Highway 17 project. And the regional director came, and public meetings for Caltrans projects aren't often a feel-good story. There was a loud round of applause, prolonged applause for Caltrans at that meeting. And this is one of the powerful things about this work, is how it brings organizations and agencies together and gives celebration for the highway departments and the public works departments working on it. And it's a fantastic opportunity for impact. But in everything we do, our most important partner is you, our community in Santa Cruz County, in the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Monterey Bay area, is so supportive. We're here because of you, and thank you for that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Donnell Schickman, and I'm the Engagement Director at the Land Trust. I hope you'll bear with me a little bit. I feel like that weasel where I've had 20 cups of coffee and not enough sleep, but I'm just so excited to welcome you to the Q&A portion of the program. If you filled out a note card, please pass it down to one of the ends, and a Land Trust staff member is going to come and collect them. All right, panelists, we got our questions. First one is, are you observing opportunistic predation at the crossings?
Oh, such a good question. So the answer is no, and there's actually been a lot of studies who've also addressed that. Do mountain lions hang out by the crossing and wait for deer to come through like a McDonald's drive-through, right? No, they do not. Because when you approach the crossing, it's very loud. There's a lot of noise and light, the car, a lot of disturbance. So most of the animals just tend to move through. I don't know, Chris, do you have anything?
I disagree.
I can add.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have any specific knowledge about it. These two would, but I wouldn't expect mountain lions to hang out at the crossing and wait for prey. It wouldn't really work for them, I don't think. But what I wouldn't be surprised is if coyotes would use fencing to chase deer into. That's something coyotes know how to do. But I don't think Laurel Curve is a big coyote place. So we have that going for us.
Okay, so my answer is different. At Highway 17, no, not yet. But there are 3 vicious animals that we have recorded hanging out around culverts, ready to attack. Okay, number 1 is Felis catus, the cat. Seriously, they'll stay there and they will hunt. The next is a long-tailed weasel. They love staying in Tahoe, in San Benito, they love staying at the entrances of culverts, and they'll take out rabbits. And then the third was actually in Sonoma. We were working with the Sonoma Land Trust, river otters. They love hanging out there, and they will come on land and take out some smaller mammals. So those are my 3.
All right, next question. How long is the process to get the 101 crossing completed?
The process to get any crossing completed is long. An optimistic scenario for Highway 101 is long. 2032 is optimistic. And while that's frustrating, the Highway 1 widening that you're seeing right now, that project was planned 20 years ago and fully funded 10 years ago. So anything involving a highway is a major initiative. So we'll try to accelerate that if we can. the designs and permitting should be ready in about 4 years. And so at that point, it's potentially insert funding here, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. It looks like there is scat in the crossing. Is that significant?
That is, yeah. And one of the coolest things I found was gray fox scat. And during camera setup, so that's what we would do. We would do a tracking survey. But right on the little rock, there was gray fox scat, and that was instantly like a good sign. So we found gray fox scat, deer scat, and what else? I think that's it. Yeah, but on the outside, a lot of bobcat scat. So it seems like the gray fox and bobcat are the two leaders of scat levers within the culvert. And then on the outside, it's like bobcat.
And we found that a lot at different bridges and culverts because it's a bottleneck. They're getting funneled into areas. So they're literally leaving like their business cards, like, I'm here, you're here, we're all here.
Awesome. I'm glad that's not how we give out business cards. Are animals as likely to cross on an overpass as an underpass like Laurel?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, I'll take this one first. Okay. So wildlife crossings, there's so many different species with habitat preferences and the way they move through the landscape. A badger, they're burrowing animals, so they tend to use culverts, smaller culverts to travel through, versus an animal like tule elk, they tend to not even use bridges. They actually need overpasses. So when you're thinking about the wild crossing that you need to be thinking about what species are you trying to facilitate. And that's why these studies are really important, so we can figure out like who's trying to cross the road, what animals are being hit, and what do we need to do to properly design? Do we need one structure, two structures? For example, Cuddy Valley, we have so many different species. We're gonna have a badger crossing, we're gonna have a deer crossing, we need mountain lion crossings. So that's the fun part to dig into is like, what do species need? And sometimes folks are a little bummed with us because they're like, okay, we'll give you your overpass. We're like, oh, we need a culvert too. Oh, we actually need that bridge modified. And it just goes on and on.
Awesome. What's the best way, place, and time to see a badger at Rock's Ranch or nearby?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, man. So I would say, in my opinion, I'm an evening guy. So like there's two types of people in this world, and I'm going to divide the room right now. There's people in the morning, and there's people in the evening. Some people are night owls, and it's like she'll wake up in the morning, and I'm like, no, I got a few more hours left. You know, she'll get up at 5, but every time I've seen wildlife, it's right when they wake up, and that's usually in the evening time. So like this badger, like I was at Rock's Ranch. It took me like a few days to track her, and you know you're getting close because you'll be on these trails and you'll just walk for miles. Like we did a badger survey with Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, and we just went Montebello, Skyline, everywhere, Russian Ridge, and you're just like you become an animal, and you just go on these trails, and then you go, okay, here's a burrow. Oh, it's a little bit old. And then you get on the track of the badger, and then you find a fresh one. You're like, I know it's in there. So when she was there, I was like, I had to be very quiet. I put it up, and I'm like, I bet you I'm gonna get her in the evening time. And that's what happened. So my personal one is evening. I think if you come out, like at Rock's Ranch, like at a hike, and we're there, and we just do a little hike, I guarantee if you have a camera, we could probably see one.
All right. How are the animals impacted by the sound of cars?
Really good, they're hard questions. I think sounds all of it.
Yeah, that's one of those questions that depends a lot on the species and on how much they're exposed to cars. So animals can habituate to noises that they might initially be afraid of, but if it doesn't come with a cost, like getting hurt or killed, they can habituate. Some species can. Those are sort of general principles in terms of the actual species here. I was actually thinking about that watching Ahíga's videos, how many of those species didn't seem to be concerned about the noise of the roads. But that is something that goes into the planning and design of overpasses or underpasses, is consideration of what the noise and lighting that species will be exposed to.
Great. Okay, next question. Is there a way to be able to see live footage of where mountain lions are or have been with the Puma project?
Yeah, so we've got a website, www.santacruzpumas.org, and we have a tracking app there where you can see the paths that mountain lions have taken through the Santa Cruz Mountains. The data is 8 weeks delayed so that you couldn't use it to find a den site or something like that. But that's an option.
What's the name of it?
SantaCruzPumas.org.
It should be called Cub Cam.
And we've thought about doing something like a live feed, but even though you saw so much footage, even if there's a crossing where there's a lot of passages, it's usually just that deer that one day. So there'd be a lot of waiting around looking at pretty much nothing for the occasional animal. But yeah, that's something we thought about with the live feeds.
I don't know, 864.
Awesome. All right. How can folks learn about volunteer opportunities related to wildlife crossings or projects?
The Land Trust this past year had a weed removal event, an invasive weed removal event right around the Highway 17 wildlife crossing. And it's our intention to be providing more of these same kinds of volunteer opportunities. Volunteers, we don't have a lot of capacity to support it right now, but we intend to increase that as time goes on. So keep coming to our website, we'll let you know.
Actually, we have one very special volunteer, Robin Davis, who is here today, and we could not be doing this project without her. Thank you so much.
Major shout out to all of our volunteers. One quick thing, I didn't add it into our presentation, but if you become a Land Trust volunteer, so the Land Trust team, they went out and they built that trail. They're out there. I didn't include this in the presentation because I don't know if it'll fit. The first Puma crossing was after they built the trail. So I saw the team basically clearing the pathway of broom and invasive weeds. And then not too long after, I think within the week, the mountain lion came and crossed. That's incredible. So they probably saw the sign. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. How are different designs for crossings determined to be more effective than others?
Yeah, now that there's a lot of crossings being built throughout the world, that is the really fun part. And for us, this has been so special because this is the first wildlife crossing that has been built in the Bay Area. So what we're doing today and the camera footage you saw, that's what folks are doing. We're setting up cameras and we're talking to each other. We're going to conferences and we have an underpass versus an overpass, whatever you're learning. So this is really groundbreaking material and quite brand new. We work with Tony Clevenger, who designed the Canadian Bands overpasses. It took one of his overcrossings. It was 10 years before he recorded a lion. So when we recorded that lion in November, it was a big score.
I'll also say I know nothing about this, right? This is not my area of expertise, but I will say that the Land Trust is also working toward protecting land for the Santa Cruz long-toed salamander, which is another of our special status species. And part of that project is to build a wildlife crossing for those little dudes too, right? And it's a whole other exercise, but it turns out that as we're thinking about designing that, we would design it not just simply around salamanders, that would be an awfully small underpass, but other animals should be able to use it too. So you design it with an eye to a specific species, but make it accessible to lots.
Great. How does funneling animal traffic through one crossing impact the species? How does funneling animal traffic through one crossing impact the species?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways. One is that it reduces mortality, right? And so that's good for the population overall. And then by allowing animals to get through and hopefully breed on both sides of the passage, it enhances mixing of the population, which is good for the genetic health of the species.
Okay, so just to add on to that, before the Highway 17 structure went in, like even way before, there was no median. So it was just 4 lanes. So what happened is like bobcats and other animals could like just run and then just run across, which we've seen actually during our roadkill surveys. So like we would see a deer and she would run, and then like a doe and she would just jump and cross all 4 lanes. But the way it impacts them is it reduces the stress, because if you're a bobcat or a puma, you can do that. But a badger cannot do that. So the structures really opened up like new possibilities for wildlife to travel, which they were doing, but then there's a point in time where they weren't because of the median in the highway. So like for badgers, they're such slow movers, badgers and porcupine, they're so slow that a median would stop them. You know, so it really opens up the possibility for species like that.
And so while an individual crossing can have great benefit to the population and the individual animals, more are better, right? And so the idea is to have redundancy, add additional structures over time. I think right now what we're facing is that these are very expensive projects, and retrofitting infrastructure is very challenging. One exciting policy change is recently enacted is that general plans, when updated, and road projects generally will have to consider wildlife connectivity in the planning stage. So that's really exciting, and related to this is in part because of the SB 790. So the Highway 17 project was in part a pilot for the concept of advanced mitigation, where the Caltrans received some credit for improving the highway. And to make that model transferable, Senate Bill 790, which the Land Trust advocated very assertively around, helped establish a program for standardizing that, so that Caltrans has a strong incentive to do these projects and can get credit for them all over the state of California. So that's a big change maker.
All right, what do mountain lions eat, and are there concerns that projects like these will increase threat to human life?
Yeah, mountain lions eat deer. They eat a lot of deer. They also eat they eat raccoons. They eat house cats. Those are the top 3 things that they eat in the Santa Cruz Mountains. They don't generally eat us. In fact, that's quite rare. And in any case, we have mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and the goal of these overpasses and underpasses isn't to increase the population, because we've got a pretty good population. It's to enhance the genetics of the population, so that we don't continue to have inbreeding, and we don't see this spiral towards extinction that could well happen otherwise.
I'll just also add that one of the findings of the Puma project is that mountain lions don't like being around people. They'll move away from human voices and human settlement. And some of the collar data will show these animals, even when they're trying to disperse and find new habitat, wandering into neighborhoods and then turning back, going back into the wildland and bouncing off of neighborhoods, finding their way through the wildlands. And one of the hopes is that by creating more connectivity in the landscape, connecting wildlands to one another, animals won't be forced deep into neighborhoods and try to set up a territory there or start eating pets or encountering more people. And so connectivity on the landscape gives a path of least resistance so that the dispersing animals stay in the wild places and don't encounter as much human conflict.
All right, our last question is, what costs more, the land or building the structures?
It's pretty close. I think at the Highway 17 project, the land protection was probably, I don't have the numbers in front of me, was a $10 to $15 million lift, and the structure was about a $10 million lift, $12 million lift. So pretty comparable. The Rocks Ranch project, yeah, we're in about 20 million so far on land. By the time we're done with that 3,000 acre goal, we'll probably be in another $30 million in on that. And the structure there is anticipated at a $60 million handle. So these are major investments in the environment of our region. And that's one reason why it's so important to have robust science, lots of collaboration, lots of planning, so that these structures, which will be permanent infrastructure lasting for 100 years, as our roadways do, that they're in the right place and built with great care and thought going into them.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our speakers, panelists here. And thank you to everyone who shared your questions. Again, if we didn't get to your question, we will be sending a follow-up email after the event that addresses everything that we heard today. And I want to say thank you to everyone here for your support. None of this happens in a vacuum, and it's really because of you investing in us for the long haul that we have crossings like this happening in our county. We hope that you will continue to stay in touch with us. You can become a member, you can follow us on social media, sign up for our updates. It's just wonderful to continue building the momentum for these things within our community. So thank you so much for your support and for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody.